I'm what you might call a fitness freak. I never miss a single day of morning walks if I'm not down with any sickness. I take my dog Buzzo with me on my morning walks. Buzzo is a golden-colored Cocker Spaniel. Those who own dogs are quite aware of the friendliness of this certain breed. He's a very playful and fun-loving dog, and he loved to run. Generally, I was used to driving to the city park for a jog, but recently the place started to get really crowded, and I prefer a quiet start to my mornings. So I started to go to another park located on the outskirts of the city. Mostly in the mornings, the park remained completely empty. It was a foggy winter morning when I started from my house at 5:30 a.m. Buzzo was sitting in the back seat and enjoying the highway ride. At around 6, we reached the park. The park was surrounded by wooden fences. Due to poor maintenance, the fence was broken in a few places. At the end of the park, one could see hiking trails leading to deep woods. I parked my car and got down with Buzzo. I took off his leash and we started to run. Needless to say, it was really cold at that time, so we were running as fast as we could. Buzzo and I often ran circles covering the entire park. After 10 minutes of running like that, my body started to warm up. Dark clouds hid the sky. The dense woods standing at the end of the park fascinated me. The ambiance was in complete silence. I could only hear the wind. Surprisingly, not a single bird was chirping that day. It made me feel as if we were the only living thing out there. Buzzo was running in front of me when he suddenly picked up a broken twig and came rushing towards me. He liked to play catch, so I took the twig from his mouth and threw it. "There you go, boy." He ran and picked it up again. We were having a fun time on our own. It was probably the third time I threw the twig, but surprisingly, Buzzo didn't pay attention to that. Instead, he started to bark looking at the end of the park. "What? What is it, boy?" He was barking looking at those dense woods. At first, I thought he might have seen some wild animal. I tried to look, but the fog was obstructing my view. I cheered him up to go and get the twig back, but he was reluctant to move from his position. He kept barking as if something out there had threatened his existence. Out of options, I had to walk towards the end of the park to pick up the twig. As I started walking, Buzzo eventually followed me. I bent to pick it up from the ground when Buzzo started to growl in a very weird way. Now, as I mentioned earlier, he's a very calm and cheerful dog. I've never seen him behave like this. He was growling like he was ready to attack something hiding in the woods. I looked at those woods, but didn't see anything. But you know how people say animals can sense danger way before humans. I wish I had returned home right that moment, taking this hint from Buzzo, but unfortunately I didn't, and I still regret that decision. I was going to ignore this when suddenly I heard footsteps coming from the woods. It felt like someone was walking on dry leaves. Buzzo barked one more time, and I thought there might be a coyote or a deer in the woods. "Shut up, Buzzo. There's nothing out there. Come on, let's run 2 more laps and then we'll go home." I started to run again. The more I ran, I heard Buzzo barking constantly. I thought he would catch up eventually, so I didn't look back. Buzzo's bark started to fade away, and after some point, he stopped. "Last lap, boy," I said, and increased my speed, thinking Buzzo will chase me. He liked to play with me this way, so I was expecting him to run ahead, but that didn't happen. I stopped and turned back. I found myself standing in that foggy park alone. Buzzo was nowhere to be found. "Buzzo! Buzzo, where are you, boy?" I kept calling him, but I didn't hear a single bark. Something in the back of my mind told me Buzzo was in danger, and right at that moment I heard a squeaking sound that dogs make when they're in pain. "Buzzo!" I rushed to the place where I last saw him. The twig that we were playing catch with was lying on the ground in the same untouched manner. I started calling him helplessly while searching the park in a panic-stricken way. "Buzzo! Come here, boy! It's time to go home! Buzzo! Buzzo!" Suddenly, I heard a dog bark coming from the woods. "Buzzo! Thank God!" I immediately jumped the fence and started running into the woods. "Buzzo! Come, boy! Come on!" Again, the bark took place and I got sure Buzzo is hiding somewhere. Maybe he chased a squirrel into these woods. Buzzo! Buzzo! But I froze on the ground. My heart stopped in fear. What I saw next, I will never be able to forget. My beloved Buzzo was lying under a big oak tree. He was dead. Blood was all around him. His golden fur was now vicious red. He was lying dead, drenched in his blood. In his face. Oh my God. I can never wash off the sight from my mind. Someone stomped his small head with a rock. I was standing there like a statue, figuring out how to react when I heard a dog bark right behind me. It was the same bark I heard a few seconds ago, thinking it was Buzzo. But Buzzo's dead. Then who's barking behind me? I slowly turned around. The blood in my veins was turning to ice. I was sweating in fear, just about to cry. As I looked behind me, I saw a scary-looking man standing near a tree and smiling at me. There was something in his grin that made me feel disgusted and terrified at the same time. I felt like someone pushed me into a garbage pit, and all I could see and smell is the rotten dirt around me. The man then stopped grinning and barked like a dog. His bark was so authentic that you could never identify it was coming from a human being. Just then, my eyes went to his hand, and I saw a bloody rock. I had no doubt that he crushed Buzzo's head with that. He then crouched on the ground, sitting like a four-legged animal, and then barked for one last time, and started to run towards me like a dog at full speed. I screamed and ran for my life. I fell on the ground while jumping the fence and hurt my ankle, but somehow I picked myself up and sprinted towards my car. I don't know how I drove home that day. I went to the cops the next day and told them everything. After hearing what happened to me and my poor dog, a cop said, "You're not the first person to report about such an incident in that park. We've gotten many complaints from people who went to walk their pet or go for a jog like you, and found them dead in those woods under mysterious circumstances. They all told us a vicious-looking madman killed their pets and chased them like a maniac. Even though we searched the park, we didn't find any suspect. Also, the woods are so deep, it was almost impossible to search the entire area with a well-equipped task force." I knew the cops aren't going to invest much effort into this matter, but every night I wake up in my sleep, seeing the most horrifying dream, where my poor Buzzo is lying dead on the ground, covered in blood, and that maniac sitting next to his corpse, eating his raw flesh like a demon from hell.